Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again. Everybody's favorite segment here on the channel, the MLB Power Rankings. Sunday evening, we always do this, usually before the last game of the night. We have the Sunday Nighter. There's a couple of games still going on. We got the Jays and Angels going on. Angels up by 2, couple innings left in that one. We have the Royals up 1-0 over San Fran with another inning left. So I'm going to kind of go through this as if those are still pretty much going to end the way they are, and I don't think they're going to affect too much. If you guys want to add your 2 cents on these power rankings, smash that like button, smash the subscribe, and join the comment section. We have a Discord where we discuss it ongoing, but right now I think it's pretty unanimous for most people. Number 30, Detroit Tigers. They went 2-1 against Houston, so they started the week all right, but then Boston kind of laid the hammer on them. Don't have a lot of potential coming from the Tigers this season. The only thing that they do got going for them is that their division is a little bit weaker, so they might pick up some wins here, but far out of the playoffs. We pretty much know they're rebuilding at this point. Could be a long season for the Tigers. Right behind them, though, we got the Oakland A's, 1-2 against Cleveland. They got roughed up by the Rays over the weekend. Same story, same bottom of the division. The only thing they don't got going for them is their division is probably a little bit harder, and very well could see them swap in here, but I'm not going to get too serious about it yet. 28, we got the Washington Nationals 0-3 against the Rays, and then they went 3-1 against the Rockies. In Coors opening up this weekend, and they put up a lot of runs, but as we know, that's what Coors is about. Not going to think that they're going to be able to beat Coors on any given day, but they managed to do it this week, so we're going to keep them there. Number 27, we got the Royals going 1-3 against the Blue Jays. They started off with a big win against the Jays, and I, as a Jays fan, got pretty nervous with how that was going, but they quickly kind of showed that they're still an up and young coming team. I do think they are trending this way. Unlike these 3 teams are kind of going to be kaput here. We could see the Royals get up into the second row throughout the season. Right now, I'm just not ready to do it. Next up, we do got Colorado Rockies. We touched on them not too long ago. They did kick off the week 0-2 against the Dodgers. I think they're going to be the weakest team in this division. We're seeing the resurgence of Arizona Diamondbacks a little bit here. I think they're going to be competing with the Giants when we'll get to them in a sec. 25. Dropping a few spots. 2-1 against Minnesota. 1-2 against the Mets. So 500 week against 2 teams that are in the upper half of the MLB. But that's not going to cut it, and this Marlins team doesn't really have what I like to see on contending teams early in the season. Just doesn't seem to have the oomph and the pitching and whatever it's going to take. I think it's pretty much a lock that they're not making the playoffs as well. Could see them struggling. I always joke that they're like the average team in the MLB. They always kind of sat in this area for probably 2 seasons now. But now we got them down in the bottom row. It might be time at the end of the season to see a catapult up the other way. But in the division they're in, it's such a strong division. I just don't see it happening just yet. Number 24, we got Cincinnati Reds. 1-1 against the Cubs in the early, and then they went 1-2 against the Phillies. Another team that I had maybe had a little bit of hopes that they're going to be right there in the mix, coming in a pretty much weaker division, but I do think they're the weakest in that division so far in the first couple of weeks of the season. And they split one with the Cubs. I don't know, but I do think the Cubs are a little bit better of a team. Number 23, San Francisco Giants. They started the week pretty good. They went 2-1 against the White Sox, and their offense was really popping off in that. But now they're kind of getting shut out by Kansas City. They're going to go 0-3 if this game ends 1-0, which it still looks like it is. I talked about it a little bit about this last week. I'm not super confident San Fran has the pieces to compete in the division, let alone a playoff spot. They just missed out on Aaron Judge, and it doesn't seem to have gone in the right direction from there. Number 22, Chicago Cubs. 1-1 against Cincy, 2-1 against Texas. A little bit of a winning week, but I haven't seen what I need to see yet from the Cubs to move them up any significant, whether to consider them in that playoff contention really at this point. I don't really, but talked about it. Central is pretty much, we're going to start talking about teams that, hey, these teams can start surprising. And this is the staple of the channel as a possible surprise. 2-1 against Texas, 1-2 against the Yankees. I dropped them a couple of spots, mainly because other teams had winning weeks, and I'm just feeling a little bit stronger about them. The offense seems to be there, and for the Orioles, but the pitching not going to be able to compete in this AL East, and we're going to talk about some other teams in that same kind of struggle as we get to them. Right now, I consider them, I guess, after the opening season series loss, the Red Sox, the weakest team in the division, because it might be the strongest team in the division, probably, right? Number 20, Arizona Diamondbacks, 1-1 against San Diego, and then they went 3-1 against the Dodgers. That's one of the games still going on, but I think they're up 9-3 or something, so I'm going to call that a win. And the Diamondbacks showing their rotation can get these wins going, and the offense has been showing up. Funny enough, these two teams still beside each other. They used to be beside each other down here battling it out a couple of years ago. Now they're both improving. We're going to see which one of these two teams can make the playoffs first. If I had to place a bet, it'd probably be the Diamondbacks. But, it's probably very close. These two teams very similar. One seems to be leaning a little bit more pitching to offense, and the other way around for the Orioles. Number 19, right there in the mix with them, I got the Red Sox. They went 0-3 against the Pirates to kick things off. A little bit of a coming-out party for the Pirates in most people's opinions. Their talent seems to be coming. But Boston finished the week off strong with a 3-0 sweeping and drubbing of the Detroit Tigers. So we got them there. And it's going to be interesting how Boston matches up against the top side of this division. We've seen them go against Baltimore. But how are they going to go against a team like the Jays, whose pitching's not that great, but great offense? It's going to be fun watching how the rest of these teams compete. Number 18, we got the White Sox, 1-2 against San Fran, and then 1-2 over the weekend against the Pirates, and that team we're going to get to in a second. But Chicago is not really doing anything to stand out to me, kind of playing 500 baseball, having days where their offense really crushes, having days where it doesn't, having days where their pitching is just off the charts, having days where it's not. The inconsistency is a concern, and of course in this division, we saw it last year, the inconsistency caught up to Chicago and they weren't able to get in the division, even though they were pretty heavy favorites coming in. Right now, I kind of put them in the middle of the pack until they show some sort of upward trend, and right now they don't have it. Number 17, probably one of the biggest gains ever for the Pittsburgh Pirates. 3-0 against the Red Sox, 2-1 against the White Sox. So I had them right here, but they just beat both these teams, so it kind of felt, if these teams kept playing each other, I probably would have to bet on the Pirates over and over. So I had to put them up higher. Pirates, I guess, having been in the bottom row since I started this power rankings 4 years ago, they finally accrued enough young talent that this team's starting to get it together. And so far they have. It's a long season, probably going to be some inconsistencies. Do I see the Pirates making a run at the playoffs? No, not really. But it's better to peg them right where they should be early, which I think is going to be a middle of the pack kind of team, than to just keep them down here and then be halfway through the season, they're middle of the pack, put them up here. I'm going to put them here now because this is where I think they're going to kind of tread majority of the season. Number 16, Seattle Mariners, 1-2 against LA Angels, and then 2-1 against Cleveland. They've now finished their series with Cleveland for the year. They split it, and they both won it when they were on the road in Other Guys Park. And then they beat the Angels, or they lost the Angels, early this week. But Seattle, kind of one of those milling up Packs teams too. Kind of put it very similar to the Pirates. I don't see them being contenders for the division. I do put the Texas Rangers slightly ahead of them, even though they had a losing week to Baltimore and to the Cubs. Just 1-2 in each, and I'm not going to hold too much about it. I talked a lot more about them in depth last week, why I think they're kind of trending up to a middle of the pack team. Similar to why I put the Pirates here, I'm going to keep Texas kind of in the middle. I know Baltimore might have beat them, but I think with the division, the way the AL East is weighted, it's a lot easier for Texas to have a shot at the playoffs and division title than those guys. And same with these kind of situation here too. So that's kind of how I played it into these. Realistically, you can probably put any of those 7 teams in any of these 7 spots. make that maybe 8 spots when we start talking about the Cleveland Guardians. 2-1 against Oakland, 1-2 against Seattle. Another kind of 500 week. And yeah, it's gonna same story as Seattle, right? So I'm just gonna keep on rolling. Number 13, I got the Toronto Blue Jays. Jays 3-1 against Kansas City. Super concerning after that first loss. The rotation is very scary for the Jays. I think they need to make some moves there if they're going to be anywhere in these top 2 rows. I think this is pretty much where they're going to be until they can address that. Coming into this video, they were split with the Angels. Angels were up 6-0, but now as I'm looking over there, it's 6-6. So really anything can go, and that goes with this team, number 12. Anything can go. So whoever wins this game in theory will probably be higher on the power rankings now that it's 6-6. But it's a wash when you look at the grand, bigger picture. But yeah, the Angels, they have had a winning week as well. They started the week 2-1, and so far winning season for the Angels. I know we talked about it last week. Little concerned with moving them up. They just never show serious promise. But I think with Ohtani and Trout, the way they've both hit the ball so far, I think they both have 3 home runs. Maybe Trout has 4. But they're hitting the ball strong, and if the rotation can kind of keep the runs down, so far it hasn't proven successful, but if they can, they're going to do well. Number 11, Philadelphia Phillies 1-2 against the Yankees, 2-1 against the Cincy Reds. Just kind of floating in there, floating playoff contender, tough division. I still have 2 teams to go for them, but if it's anything like last year, they'll probably chip around 550, closing in on 600, well in line for a playoff wildcard berth. Number 10, I think this is one of the lowest I've ever had them in a long time. 2-0 against Colorado, 1-3 against Arizona. It's just, they lost a lot of pieces over this offseason. They are not the same powerhouse that they have been in years past. Maybe going deep as well into the playoffs has created some fatigue in the players that do remain. And sometimes when you win and you get it done, you just don't have that same fire to get it done again. Because you know how hard it takes, but you've done it. You don't have that drive. I just don't see the Dodgers as the top team in their division, let alone a serious World Series contender based off what I've seen so far. There is some concerns. Playoff team, pretty much guaranteed. Maybe over-exaggerating by dropping them so far. But right now, that's where I see it. Number 9, I consider these as the division contenders. 1-2 against Miami to start the week, and then they beat Houston. So it was a big series win, and I like what I see out of the Twins so far. I do now peg them as the favorite to win the Central. And yeah, I think they're going to keep on rolling as long as they avoid injuries. Byron Buxton off to a huge start for them. He's always fun to watch. Again, if he doesn't get injured. Next up, Cardinals, big drop, 0-3 against Atlanta, 1-2 against the Brewers. I think the Cardinals have had the toughest schedule out of all the MLB getting out of the gate, having Toronto, Milwaukee, and Atlanta to get things started. All probably playoff teams. So far, they've got a losing record. So I dropped them a bit below the teams that they lost to this past week. And I think they have some ground to make up. Their offense seems really much there, but the pitching has not been able to suppress runs whatsoever. Number 7, Atlanta. 3-0 against St. Louis, 1-2 against San Diego. They play again tonight. They're the evening game against San Diego. And took a lot of heat for this, for having them in 10th last week. Not sure why. I think 4 wins in a row after that video, people start piling in a little bit, but I think that's pretty much right where they're at. Yeah, don't know what else to really say to that. Number 6, Milwaukee Brewers, 3-0 against the Mets, and then 2-1 against St. Louis. I'm impressed with where I put them. I jumped them up on quite a few spots. If they keep this up, I'll put them in the top 4, really, because to surprise the Mets like that with a sweep, sure as heck surprised me. And then division rival, who they're going to be competing against seriously with the Cardinals, beating them in that really good series. The offense has surprised me. The pitching, they have quite 5 strong starters so far. So they could very well prove to be a powerhouse. I've now leaped them into who I think is in the lead for the division, really. Number 5. Dropping a few spots, we got the Houston Astros 1-2 against Detroit, 1-2 against Minnesota, and I think there's a little bit of a hangover here, but there is some concerns. Altuve out of the lineup, obviously, for the beginning of the season. They've lost a little bit of the rotation with Verlander too now. They're not the powerhouse team they were last year and the years before. Slowly, the talent has weeded out, as it tends to do as you go all in and go after World Series after World Series. But I am a little bit concerned here. We're seeing a little bit of drop in Houston scale advantage over the rest of their division as we see a couple teams trying to make a name for themselves to be a contender. So I do think Houston's in for a harder season than we have seen in the past, especially long term. I don't suspect that they'll be the number 1 in the AL when all's said and done. Number 4, Mets 0-3 against Milwaukee and 2-1 over Miami. So not anything dominant so far, and it just hasn't all come together for the Mets. I think we've said that over and over here on. It just never seems to get all together when we need it. But we're early, and it's April, and they're a great team on paper. And I know I get a lot of hate for that sometimes. That's definitely when I was all over the Dodgers the past 2 years for saying, but they're on paper. But yeah, that's really it for the Mets. Number 3, Yankees. 2-1 against Baltimore. Yeah, and 2-1 against Philly. So Baltimore is this weekend. So nice division win, and a good example of why Baltimore is where they are. Is they're just not going to win the series long term against the Yankees, Jays, and Rays. I think that's kind of how I see it. So they have no shot at playoffs if they can't win series against these guys. Baltimore's going to have to find a way. The Yankees, top team in MLB, no question about it. Number 2, we got the San Diego Padres. 1-1 against Arizona, 2-1 against Atlanta. I just like this team now very strongly to win their division. Now that what we've kind of seen about the Dodgers early on, what I was talking about with them last week, and just on paper, they're solid lineup. Their rotations are top of the MLB, and their bullpen's strong. So I think we're going to see them have one of the best records in the MLB, which brings us to number 1, possibly the first ever time number 1 here on the channel. Contrary to all the hate I've gotten over the years of I always have them too low, they finally made it to the top. And how can you really hold it against them? Whether they're 9-0, mind you, they've played the 3 worst teams, all 3 at the bottom, but they haven't lost. Their offensive numbers have been off the charts. Home runs wise, they've been off the charts. Their pitching has been shutting these teams out. They're strong, and I'm gonna be here early because their offense is living up to the hype of what they wanted it to, and they're pitching, as always, home-built talent coming through Tampa Bay. Got to give it to them when credit's due. They've started the season strong, and I'm going to be here early, and I'm not going to discount their record early like I always tend to do. And maybe I jumped the gun a bit too much, and these other teams will smack them back down when they start playing harder teams, but it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know where you guys differ and what was I just way out to lunch on. I appreciate all the comments in the below. And if you want to keep the conversation going, join our Discord. It's in the description below, and we'll see you for that next video.